Hi, everyone. Welcome back here to Techstrong TV. I am really happy to have this next guest on. I don't think she's been on Techstrong TV before, unless I'm mistaken, but look, I've been doing Techstrong TV for a long time. Let me introduce you to Kara Sprague. Kara is the CEO of HackerOne. Kara, welcome to Techstrong TV.
Thanks for having me, Alan. Great to be here.
You've not been on before, correct? Or with
I don't
me
believe
anyway?
so. At least not in this role.
Nope. Okay. Well, that's important. Well, and that's a great segue. I wanted to ask you, you weren't born the CEO at HackerOne. Give our audience a sense of your journey, Kara. It's a great story, and I'm sure people want to hear it.
Sure. Well, I am an engineer by heart and by training. This was back in the early 2000s. And at that point, when I started taking on engineering roles and realizing that a lot of the work was very individual, it felt like I worked on the same thing for a very long time and I was missing the big picture. I decided to go back to school and broaden my horizons a bit. And that ended up taking me into management consulting for 13 years, where I worked in the tech practice. So I got exposure to a whole bunch of technology companies, B2B, B2C, up and down the stack. It was a great overall view on the industry. And ultimately, I made the decision to move into a company, F5, as an executive there in the product organization. And I spent 7 years there learning how to take, translate what happens in consulting, which oftentimes, goes only so far into the strategy and really learn how to drive it and operationalize those strategies. And then last November of 2024 is when I made the move over to HackerOne as CEO.
Love it. So, look, F5 is a company we've covered. My good friend Laurie McVitie, I'm sure you probably know Laurie if you were there 7 years. Laurie's still there writing up a storm. I just saw something she wrote on LinkedIn this weekend. I was going to reach out to her and ask her if she wants to come on here and talk about it. I've been reading Laurie McVitie, and Don, her husband, used to write for us here at Techstrong. But I've been reading the McVities, I'm ashamed to tell you, like since the 90s, early 90s, something like that, a long time. So I get the whole engineer to business, moving to the business side of the house, then doing the kind of the business consulting thing and all of that, the F5 piece. And of course, everyone wants to be a CEO. I don't know if everyone wants to be a CEO, actually. I think that's my generation's bias, right? That's a dream job. Maybe today not everyone wants to be the CEO. But Kara, what got your juices going, so to speak, about coming in as the CEO of HackerOne?
Well, HackerOne, it's an organization that's been around for over a decade. And it is the pioneer in a space called bug bounty. And that's where organizations, and I'm talking about like companies, they set up programs so that the independent security researcher ecosystem can then submit vulnerabilities in a safe way. And in some cases, as in the case of bug bounty, get paid for that. And that model was incredibly intriguing to me when I first learned about the company, because if you've been in cybersecurity for a while, and I started getting into cybersecurity when I was a consultant, and then did more of it, even more at F5 as the company was enhancing its portfolio in security. What you find is that the industry has been plagued by some very long-term challenges. So number one is we keep creating a lot of insecure stuff. Every time we make new applications and put them out there, those applications often have a lot of vulnerabilities that are being shipped with them. And we know, especially in this age of AI, with more AI generating more code, that the code that's getting released is even more insecure. And so that backlog of vulnerabilities only continues to grow. We know that there's a talent shortage, and there's just not enough people with the skill set and the desire to be in cybersecurity. I think, some estimates are that talent shortage is in the millions of people. And so when you look at an organization like HackerOne, the whole premise is how do you scale out through a platform and through the ecosystem of independent security researchers to really bring companies the kind of talent and expertise they need to identify those vulnerabilities and make their applications and their technology safer before it can be exploited by a criminal. That just really spoke to me. And I would say in the time since I joined the company, I'm even more excited because now we're seeing all of these new developments out there. There's still AI is enabling us to write applications and develop technologies faster than ever. We've got these new developments like Claude Code Security, and I think OpenAI has one of their own, which are promising to say we can stop shipping insecure code. And so there's even this vision that maybe someday the code that we write and produce will no longer have vulnerabilities in it. And we still
One could hope.
that's at least the very rosy view of it.
Uh-huh.
And there's still this mountain of technology that's already out there and deployed that people are using. It's running our critical infrastructure. It's running, our core citizen services. It's running the business cores. But there's still fundamental vulnerabilities and exposures within that code base that we still need to address.
Agreed. Look, as I said, I've been in the security industry 25 plus years. Technology almost 35. I was here when the whole responsible disclosure fight went down and reasonable people won and said, look, there is a way to do this the right way. And I was here when the whole bug bounty concept, Katie Masouras and some of the other folks came about, and what a great thing that was, right? Because now you had this army, crowdsourced of vulnerability researchers who can, whether they were fuzzing or whatever, they would help you find your vulnerabilities. And it was, yeah, there were these, there were a few big $1 million vulnerabilities, if you want to call them, but the average vulnerability we were finding was a couple of $100, and it was well worth a couple of $100 to find that vulnerability and close that one off, right? Of course, you mentioned the AI word, and it's already had a profound impact, especially on the bug bounty program, right? Because I wrote an article about this just last week. Actually, it might have just come out today, actually, now that I think about it. But the arithmetic has changed, where we used to pay the money to find maybe bugs. What we're finding now is with AI finds a lot. Forget whether AI creates bugs when it's coding. I agree with you. It'll get better. But it's finding so many bugs in our existing code and in our new AI code that the value is no longer in finding potential bugs. The value is in evaluating those potential bugs, finding out if they are in fact real bugs, and then, or vulnerabilities, let's not, use the right term, and then finding out, are they exploitable? Are they reachable? Are they, how critical severity-wise are we doing these things? And that focus change, that arithmetic change is something that I'm sure, like at HackerOne, Kara, you guys got to be seeing firsthand already, right? It's not just enough to find a potential bug. We got to take it all the way through. I'm wondering how that, what you guys, because you're in the front lines on this. I just report on it.
Well, we're seeing very much the same thing that you are describing. So, average bounties today are a couple of thousand, and, HackerOne in the last year paid out over $80 million in bounties. So the amount of bugs that this approach is and vulnerabilities that this approach is uncovering continues to grow. But to your point, right? We're at an inflection point in the cybersecurity industry where we now have attack surfaces growing very, very fast as companies rush to implement new AI-driven capabilities and deploy technology faster than ever before. But at the same time, the cost to run an attack or the cost to find a vulnerability has come way, way down because of the capabilities that AI enables for cyber criminals as well as for ethical hackers. And that means, to exactly what you're saying, the focus can no longer just be on discovery. We need to look for solutions that enable companies to move from discovery all the way through the cycle to remediation and actually prove that there's actually a fix that has been implemented and that it sticks. And that's one of the really exciting things I think there is about, these offerings that provide adversarial thinking, which is what a lot of what HackerOne brings to companies, is we offer them a view of the vulnerabilities that are truly exploitable. Because these are things that have been identified on an external attack surface and things that have actually been validated to be of a certain severity level and truly a risk to the company. And what we find in those programs is that those are oftentimes the things that companies want to prioritize for their development teams to focus on first. Because rather than focus on, the laundry list of theoretical exposures or vulnerabilities that might come out of a more deterministic scanner, what you want to do is find those things that an external adversary is actually able to detect and exploit in your technology, and make sure that you close that gap first. And that's exactly what we offer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's an important piece of it, right? Too many, you can't blame them. I'm not blaming anyone, but too many people, like you mentioned, $80 million.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, they just get fixated on the number, right? And they don't understand the real, the full mission. Yes, the mission is to facilitate researchers getting compensated for bugs and vulnerabilities they find. But, and if that's all you're interested in, great. 80 million is the number you should know. But there's more to that mission, right? That
Yes.
goes beyond paying out the bounty.
Precisely.
Yep. And I think that's an important, people out there need to pick that out. But Tara, we were talking off camera. I told you I spent all weekend automating stuff with agentic AI. Now, I've been using generative AI since it burst on the scene, right? But I can't help but think over the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks, this thing with Clawbot, right? OpenClaw, whatever you want to call it, OpenClaw. It's like another era has kicked, right? We're seeing a whole different kind of wave, if you will. I wonder, are you feeling and seeing that too? Like, so we're moving from purely generative to agentic AI. So, you didn't need an agent in Claude code to write code. But now not only is Claude code writing that code, it's deploying that code for you. It's setting up the hosting of it and everything else, right? And then, as you said, the latest ChatGPT is Codex or whatever it's called. It's not terrible either. Though developers seem to be forming around Claude for various reasons. But do you see this? Have you seen the switch flip as well? Are
Absolutely. So absolutely. I see this, and I have been also using this in my both my personal and my own specific professional workflows. The agentic AI has been a game changer. We see this with our customers. So, we were very proud to evolve our Gen AI offering High into a team of agents last year. And what we're seeing from our customers in terms of what they're reporting is that some of the agentic workflows are saving our customers up to 75% of the time that they used to spend on incoming reports. And again, for overworked security teams, that is a massive, massive time saver for them and a huge unlock.
The miracle. I mean, it's game changing.
And then equally, for those CISOs that have been struggling to get coverage across their attack surface area because it's time intensive and expensive to be doing pen testing, for example, or periodic pen testing, which many organizations in the past have applied only to a fraction of their overall attack surface on a very irregular basis. What we're now seeing with agents is that agents can now test continuously across those entire attack surfaces. And so you get the proposition of a lot more continuous testing and a lot more breadth of coverage. So it's actually really exciting in terms of the ability now that we have to do much more robust cybersecurity and find more of those issues. But to your point, finding the issues is not the only problem, right? You need to complement the discovery with a platform that can actually facilitate getting those issues remediated. Which is where all of the validation and the prioritization has to come in, and the integration into developer workflows. And so that's actually the vision that I'm very excited about that we are working on is how do you bring an entire end-to-end view together so that regardless of the different discovery mechanisms that might be out there in the market, finding vulnerabilities, and there's going to be a lot of vulnerabilities discovered over the next 12 to 18 months. How do we make sure that you put those into something that makes sure that you're optimizing the risk that you're reducing by prioritizing appropriately what your developers are focused on?
And this is something HackerOne is bringing to market.
Yes.
Available now, available soon, coming soon. What's the status?
We have it available. It's available now, and it's continuing to get better every month, every quarter. So
as everything is, it seems, right? It's crazy. How do people sign up for that, Kara?
They can. They can reach out to HackerOne. You can contact us through our website. You can reach out to me directly, Kara at HackerOne. But this is exciting, and what I'm looking forward to. I really see a huge amount of potential as we move into this agentic era. To truly take the burden off of cybersecurity teams and to really actually, I think there is a path for us to finally start having technology that is more inherently secure. Which should be exciting for everybody.
From your mouth to God's ears, right? As they say. Kara, but there are people out here who worry about their jobs.
Yeah.
I don't know a nicer way of saying it, so I'm just going to be blunt, which is my style. They're worried, is this AI going to take their job?
Yeah.
Is this AI going to just automate finding vulnerabilities, remediating vulnerabilities, documenting vulnerability? Where do I fit in? Where's the human? I'm a human. Where what do I do? Am I going to be as valuable? Am I going to, is the security industry going to have a place for me? Do I have a place in it? And, as you said right in the beginning, it's still an industry where we have, at the very least, tens of thousands of openings probably. Right? If not hundreds or millions. And if history is any guide, as these new waves of innovation and technology come out, it doesn't make security smaller, right? It's none of these things always. So I'm wondering, what do you say to those people out there, Kara, who are worried?
I would say, first, I think that that concern is a familiar feeling for anybody who's lived through these massive generational shifts in technology. We saw this when the industrial era came. We saw this through the various evolutions of computers from mainframes into personal computers and then into the internet era. And AI is bringing a fresh wave of disruption to the way that work gets done. And yes, there are some new things about AI that are different from previous generations. But if history is our guide, to the point you made exactly, Alan, this will expand the opportunity set. This expands tremendously what an individual is capable of doing. And this should create more opportunity for us to bring real outcomes to life at an individual level. And so the amount of empowerment that an individual has at this point with these tools is astounding. And that's very, very exciting. And yes, there is change in what we do on a day-to-day basis and how we get our work done and how we drive impact. But that change buys us the opportunity to have much, much more impact than ever before.
Agreed. We mentioned the website, but I don't think we ever did the URL, Kara. Is it HackerOne.com?
Yeah, it's HackerOne.com.
Then that's one spelled out, O-N-E. So it's HackerOne.com.
.com.
Got it. Kara, we're about out of time. I want to thank you. I want to invite you back because this, as we're talking about, this changes almost day to day right now, if not week to week, certainly month to month.
Yeah.
I'd love to continue hearing what you're seeing, not just from your customers who pay you, right, for the HackerOne services, but from the research community that you're so intertwined with as well. And because I think they're mirror images of each other in some ways, but there's going to be they'll each be figuring out their place in this new reality that we're finding ourselves in.
Happy to. It's
love it.
As you said, it's a very fast moving space. And a lot of very fascinating things are happening every day.
Absolutely. I was here for the whole internet thing, and then of course the cloud, and I rode the .com up, the .com down. I did the cloud. I did venture-backed startups. Then here in media for 10, 12 years. I don't think anything has moved this fast. Right? This gives internet time a whole new meaning. Kara, thanks for coming on here. Continued success at HackerOne. Do come back and keep us posted, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Kara Sprague, CEO, HackerOne, here on Techstrong TV. We're going to take a break. We'll be back in just a bit. Hey, everyone. It's Alan Shimel, founder, CEO here at Techstrong, and welcome to our continuing series on AI, Agentic AI, the future, here with the Microsoft team and our Futurum analyst team, as well as Techstrong. In this next episode, though, we're going to be joined by Mitchell Ashley of Futurum, who leads the software development lifecycle and building segment at Futurum. And Mitchell is talking with Bryan Goode, whose official titles is Corporate Vice President at Agents Marketing. But Bryan is really here talking about agent apps and chat. And it's obviously a very hot topic as we move to an agentic AI workflow-based basis. So let's join Mitchell and Bryan here with me, and it's great to have them both.
My name is Mitch Ashley, and I'm VP and Practice Lead of the Software Lifecycle Engineering Practice at Futurum Research.
And Mitch, my name is Bryan Goode. I lead the business applications and agents team here at Microsoft.
Let's start here. 2025 is described as kind of an inflection point for AI adoption. What do you think are the most significant changes that you've seen in organizations as they're using AI and agents in their businesses this year?
Well, I absolutely agree. 2025 is really an inflection point, and we'll sometimes describe it as the year that the frontier firm was born. And you might have heard us talk about the frontier firm before. It's this idea of companies that are putting AI really at the heart of their business, and it's enabling them to do things like reinvent the way they engage with customers or transform their business processes inside their company. And beyond. And it's really the year these frontier firms are sort of rising up, and a time when I think we can learn a lot from these early adopters and understanding how they're deploying AI, how they're being successful, and then figure out how we can take those insights and bring them to our own businesses. That's where you can have outsized impact.
As AI transforms those functions, what do you see as the new patterns of work that's enabled by Copilot and agents as customers start leveraging the technology for productivity or innovation?
I'll tell you what, I have studied these frontier firms as they come up, and there's really three patterns that I see across these frontier firms. The first is really enabling employee productivity. So they give every employee an AI assistant like Microsoft 365 Copilot, and it helps those employees be more productive. The second pattern that I see is really these frontier firms deploying AI to automate existing business processes. So, for example, they already have a way of handling expense reports, but they can use AI to speed that up and reduce costs. And that certainly results in some benefits to the customer. The third pattern is really where a customer like starts from the beginning, let's say from first principles, and they reimagine a function altogether. They'll reimagine what it means to engage with a customer who has an issue with their product, and they'll put agents at the heart of that. Most companies can only take on one or two of these functional transformation projects at any given time because it's a big lift. Again, it's reimagining a function from first principles. It's not just taking existing processes and applying AI to them.
How far along do you think most organizations are in their adoption cycle for generative AI?
Well, I think we're still in early innings. There's no doubt about that. Customers are starting to deploy AI in different functions, as we talked about, but certainly they haven't, in most cases, fully realized kind of the transformation that AI can have across their organization. So it's still very early innings. But I'd say we see very promising signs and green shoots of that adoption and success. Again, the key really here is to start function by function. Think about a particular function. Think about peeling it back to the business processes you need to go focus on. That's where you can have outsized impact.
How do you define agentic business applications and why are they critical for organizations?
Yeah. Well, I do have a vision that there's the application of old is really transformed with AI. And we call that new type of application the agentic business application. And the agentic biz app includes the assistant for the human to start to use. It includes pre-built business process agents that basically take the drudgery out of work. And then it's built on a data foundation. And so instead of being limited just to the data that, maybe is in the CRM system or the ERP system, it joins that with data from other lines of business systems and even productivity data so that you have a rich set of data that you can build agents on top of and you can empower your humans to get better decisions from. And so this idea that brings all those together, the assistant, the agent, the application, I call the Agentic Biz app, and I think it's a really big idea.
Let's talk about why you're optimistic about the future of agentic business applications.
I have a lot of optimism here because number one, I see customers already deploying these applications and really transforming their business. So I already see people starting to get great benefit from it. But at a more human level, the thing that gets me excited is like if you think about every one of our jobs, like there's a lot of stuff that we end up having to do that really isn't adding joy to our lives. Me doing an expense report or, filling out a CRM system, with an update from a customer call. Those aren't the things that make us unique. Those aren't the things that bring joy. Those aren't really even things that add business value collectively. But if we can delegate those things to AI and agents, I think we'll enable ourselves to actually go do far bigger things and really take our ambition to the next level. And so I am absolutely excited for what the future holds.
I'd love to hear about how you see the role of AI agents evolving just over the next few years, especially as organizations start to redesign core business processes, drive outcomes for efficiency. How do you see this taking shape?
Yeah, great question. I would say that we really believe there's a spectrum of agents. There will be very simple agents that someone will use that might just be grounded on a particular knowledge source and help you, understand, what might happen from that knowledge source. Then there'll be task-based agents, and then there'll also be more sophisticated, fully autonomous agents as well. And this more autonomous agents is where you can unlock a lot of business value. These are agents that aren't called by a human. They're just running independently. They're triggered based on different actions, and they can really automate business processes, in some cases from start to finish. So we believe there's this spectrum of agents. And today, I'd say most agentic use cases start with those more simple kind of knowledge agents. But increasingly, we're seeing customers bring in these task-based agents and autonomous agents to automate things end to end.
How about the C-suite leaders? How should they be thinking about investing in agentic technologies for long-term value?
Well, every C-suite leader I talk to today is already in on AI. Like every one of them recognizes that it's a competitive advantage if they can move quickly. And if they don't move quickly, they recognize it could be a disruptive force in their industry. But let's face it, AI, it's transforming businesses, it's transforming functions, it's going to reshape entire industries. And every C-suite leader I talk to recognizes that and wants on board. What they're looking for, though, is a partner. They're looking for the tech, of course. They want to make sure they've got the right tech, but they're also looking for a partner to help them shape this in their business. And that's where Microsoft, I think, comes into play. We're not a large scale model maker, but we do take the best of the models and bring them into the workplace so that companies can use them.
We're talking about AI being a disruptive technology, probably because it seems that it really can and will affect every part of our work, our lives, etc. Certainly is affecting how we create software with new concepts like agents and agentic AI. Curious about your thoughts. Share with us, how does Microsoft view what the transformation is going to be like with AI really having an impact and a big benefit to businesses?
Yeah, many industry pundits will say that this move to AI agents is going to lead to the rise of more consumption like models or outcome based pricing. And I think they're right. That's definitely a direction that I see the world shifting as well. The only thing I would balance that with is that many customers are still most comfortable buying things on a per user or per seat basis. And so the approach I'm taking is, how do I enable customers to buy offerings that they're comfortable with? And that's typically like a per user or some type of per tenant type of license, while giving them the flexibility to grow and shift into more consumption models as their business changes. And so we are at an inflection point, just as we said. And I think one of the things that will change is the business model over time.
Talk some more about agentic. We think about agents operating on their own or more autonomously, and why is that an important thing that organizations are looking to move to?
Yeah, it really comes down to business priorities. Like every business leader I talk to wants to find ways to grow their top line revenue, or they're looking for ways to automate things that they're doing so that they can save money or redirect folks to focus on more important activities. And, autonomous agents really fit that bill. Imagine in the sales context, you can have an autonomous agent, going through marketing leads and qualifying them before handing them off to a human seller. That's work that wouldn't have gotten done in the past or would have been done by a human seller and have been relatively low value, not something they really enjoyed about their job. And so an AI agent can do that and add great value to the company, and again, help that company grow on the top line.
Talk about Microsoft and the offering that you have in the context of an end-to-end toolkit, if you will,
Yeah.
for functional transformation.
As far as the toolkit goes, we really believe that there's three essential parts to it. The first is we think every employee should have an AI assistant. In our case, that's Microsoft 365 Copilot. Think of that as a productivity tool to help every employee get through their workday and get more done. That can be quite transformative. that next step up is where agents come into the picture. And I describe agents as really being for every business process or workflow in an organization. And we have a toolkit that enables customers to build their own agents. It starts with Copilot Studio, but even extends into our Azure capabilities with our Azure AI Foundry product. So agents pair very nicely with that Copilot that I described first. And then the final step is where the system of record becomes the system of action. And we'll sometimes call this the agentic business application, where you take a CRM system and you add agents and an assistant to it to really transform. Those three are the essential ingredients or building blocks for AI transformation in a frontier firm or any business at this point.
That's a great term. Can you share some examples of how Microsoft customers are already seeing measurable impact from adopting agentic business applications?
Yeah. One example I think I can give is Lifetime. They're a great customer of ours based here in the United States. They've used us as part of their finance and supply chain operations, and they've deployed agents to basically speed up how they handle and process e-commerce orders. In fact, I think it saved them 95% in terms of their e-commerce order efficiency by deploying AI agents and agentic business applications to solve that problem. So I think that's a great example. We also have another great example from Europe, a large utility named Eneco, who deployed a multi-language AI agent for their customers to help them scale and address customer questions. It's a pretty cool solution, saves them time, and again, helps them scale up. Now, it's a really exciting time in the world of agents.
You talked about the C-suite and kind of the three phases in this adoption curve as we adopt AI. What kind of recommendations do you have of like how to get started? Well, maybe near some of the near-term activities.
Well, as I said earlier, I think AI is going to transform every company, every function, every industry, and that opportunity is so vast. Sometimes it's hard to know where to get started. And I've got two bits of advice really there to anybody that is pondering that question. The first thing is, again, start with a function. Pick a function that you want to go after and then peel it like an onion. Go look at the next layer, which are the business processes in that function that you can apply a copilot or agents to really transform. The other thing, though, is like, don't get into analysis paralysis. Just pick a business process. Just go pick a business process to get started with. And as you learn from applying AI to that business process, whatever it is, whatever your thorniest business process is, go apply AI to it. You are going to learn. Your organization's going to learn. Your culture will adapt. And then it will flow from there. So the opportunity is so vast. Don't let that keep you from getting started. You got to get started, start simple, pick one thing, and go from there.
So as we move to an agentic business environment, let's talk about the people. How do you see the role of human creativity, judgment, leadership? How is that going to evolve?
Yeah, well, that's an excellent question. And one of the things that we'll often talk about is how AI and frontier firms is going to transform the way we work. It's going to change the org chart into more of a work chart. We sometimes talk about frontier firms taking on the Hollywood model, where individuals will swarm around a problem, like focus on a problem, and then disband. Once they've got a solution, and so it's absolutely going to change the way we work with others inside the workplace. It also, I think, is going to give rise to a new idea that we call an agent boss. And you can imagine, just as a people manager today might take work and delegate it to different humans on their team, resolve conflicts and sort of manage performance. Every one of us in the future is going to do that, but not just with humans, but also with agents. So imagine taking a business problem, breaking it up into pieces, delegating it to agents or agents on your team, resolving conflicts that might come up, applying human judgment. it's going to be an absolutely transformational moment. And I'm really excited about it. I really believe that, there is still a huge opportunity for humans with human ambition to go do great work amplified by AI.
Talk a little bit about how you see the difference in the working together between applications, assistants, agents, the different technologies.
Well, that's an excellent question. And we really have this complete toolkit that spans everything from the assistant to the agent to the application. And I think those three things work together in a symbiotic way. As an example, you can imagine that I might go to my assistant and, ask a simple question, my AI assistant like Microsoft 365 Copilot, and ask a question about, summarize the emails or help me respond to the emails I've got. Or I might use an agent to update a CRM record after I meet with a customer. But I'm still going to want to go to an application really that's a purpose-built experience for me if I want a more specialized or fine-tuned experience. So those three things really work together.
Talk a little bit about the industries or maybe the business functions that you expect to see reshaped first by agentic AI transformation.
Yeah, there are three or four, I'd say, functions in particular that are, I'd say, ground zero for functional transformation with AI and agents. Certainly, customer service and customer experience is one that is absolutely being reshaped and, say, a very early adopter of AI, no doubt about it. Another where I'm seeing a lot of early AI adoption is in sales. And it's just because, just as we talked about, there's a big opportunity to use AI to basically increase capacity for that organization to grow top line revenue. So the business impact there is undeniable. But I also see it in places like finance and supply chain, where you can use AI to shorten the time it takes from an order to actually being able to ship it that order. We're seeing people use AI to improve accounts payable and accounts receivable. So we're seeing some pretty interesting impacts there.
Let's talk a little bit more about the frontier firms. They're not just adopting technology, they're also changing the way they're doing business around AI agents and Copilot capabilities. You talk about what they're doing to invest and support the short-term ROI that they're looking to get for long-term innovation.
The most successful frontier firms are doing actually is taking a functional approach. And so certainly they'll think about their entire company, but they'll really take an approach that's function by function. They'll think about their sales function as an example, and then they'll peel back the onion a little bit and understand which processes inside their sales department they can automate using AI agents as an example. They'll look at which things their salespeople need help with, where you could pair up an assistant like Copilot to help them throughout their workday. And they'll even look at how they can bring agents in to really augment business capacity, maybe to grow top line revenue or take out costs. But starting function by function has really been the recipe that these frontier firms are using to see success. As an example, in our sales organization, by deploying Copilot and agents, we've been able to improve revenue per seller, in some cases by almost 10% in some organizations. And if you think about that, giving a seller 10% more capacity is like giving them an additional month in a year without actually having them spend any extra hours through the work week. And so there's some pretty remarkable results. That's just sales. We've been able to do the same in customer service, in our finance department, in our IT department. Our legal team has been able to reduce costs by 5%. By deploying AI and agents within their functions.
How do we ensure trust and transparency as agentic systems become more and more autonomous?
Yeah. Well, there's two things that we want to do to help with trust and transparency. The first is we have a rigorous set of principles on responsible AI. So for any AI that Microsoft deploys, we adhere to an important set of guidelines. And that's really table stakes. So that's the first piece, responsible AI and our focus there. The second thing that I think is important is we now have an opportunity to start to quantify the value and the impact that many agents will have. And we often will call that in the industry, we'll call that evals or benchmarks. And increasingly, I think we have an opportunity to help our customers understand how agents are being effective in their workplace using these evals and benchmarks on real world problems. So, for example, a typical workflow will be a sales leader doing sales research to try to understand like how they might want to organize accounts or territories or reshape planning as they think about the year ahead. We recently released a new benchmark that we call the Sales Research Bench, and it shows how agents can actually help sales leaders in that very specific job, and it's quantified. And so I think you'll start to see more of that. And between following responsible AI standards and then using quantitative measures like evals and benchmarks to understand efficacy, I think we're really on the cusp of helping customers know how they can deploy AI in a safe way for real business results.
Well, thank you, Bryan, for sharing with us your insights and kind of look into the future. What's happening with agentic business applications?
Thank you very much.
It's really amazing the pace at which AI has been adopted and continues to evolve. The technology evolves on a near daily basis. But at the same time, organizations have to figure out how they're going to implement their AI strategies and what the business outcomes that they're most important to their business. I think it's very fascinating how Microsoft has approached the market, both from the standpoint of addressing the individual and their productivity, but also thinking about new workflows, new models of business, but doing that with not a set of tools, but a set of capabilities that provide integration with data, process, workflow, and agentic AI. No one knows for sure what the future holds and what an agentic business might really, really look like. But in situations like today, when we remove constraints of what we can do with technology thanks to AI, that's where the possibilities are created. Using tools like Copilot, using applications like Dynamics 365, and we'll see what end users as well as technologists bring to bear in their ideas and how they reshape businesses for today and tomorrow. I don't know about you, but I'm super excited about the future that we're creating together, thanks to working with technology companies and with end users like yourself.
Shimmy says, shimmy says, shimmy, shimmy, shimmy says, ask me almost anything.
Hey everyone, welcome to this week's Shimmy Says. This one's going to be a little different. I say that every week, but this one really is a little different. We're living in heady times. And that moment when you realize that, the switch is flipped, something big just changed things. And we're never going back to where we were before. Over here at Techstrong, we had that moment this week. I'm going to tell you more about it, but it involved an AI agent, a WordPress, and one very stubborn editor. Sounds like a joke. They didn't all walk into a bar at the same time. But there's so much talk about AI, agentic AI. Of course, NVIDIA had GTC this week, and Jensen Huang was up there talking all about how, this is going to add $1 trillion in revenue. And we've got people saying this is amazing. We got other people saying it's not amazing. We got other people saying it could be amazing. It might be amazing. Well, that's what I want to talk to you about today. But I'm not going to talk about what I've read or what I've heard, what other people are saying. I want to get real this week. I'm going to tell you exactly what our experience here at Techstrong has been. I call it Techstrong eating our own AI agentic dog food. And it's really a peek behind the curtains how one small tech media company has, adopted or at least tried to adopt agentic AI and what our experience has been and how it's changed things. And I hope it'll serve as a real point of information for you, not hype. I don't have any horse in the game here, but I want to tell you exactly what we've done. So let's really talk about what's going on with AI right? As I said before, not the press releases or the slides or the prophets of LinkedIn, telling you we're all going to be replaced by lunchtime next Tuesday. Well, I'll be at RSA next Tuesday. I want to tell you what happens, as I said before, in a real company, when a real company like Techstrong deploys this stuff inside our business. It's funny. We've been covering AI at Techstrong since it burst on the scene 2.5 or so years ago. But we've gone from covering AI to running on AI. And that's very different, right? Talking about it, writing about it's great. Eating that dog food, that's another story. So let me get into it here, right? So when ChatGPT first burst on the screen, I guess it was late 2023, we did what every tech media company did. We wrote stories, we interviewed vendors, we debated the implication, we tested it out. And what do I mean by tested out? You know what I mean. The parlor tricks, the magic stuff, right? Write me a poem, take this article in the style of Shakespeare, summarize that article, explain quantum computing to me like I was a 5-year-old. And for people who hadn't seen the AI kind of parlor tricks before, it was magical. You got like all kinds of oohs and ahs. But for those of us, especially in security, tech in general, but security more importantly, we were very impressed, but cautious. Look, it hallucinated. It made stuff up. It lied. It deleted stuff. There was all kinds of security. And around the wrapper of it, no matter how bad it screwed things up, it always sounded so confident. Even when it was wrong, it sounded confident. Oh, sorry, Shimmy, I'll correct that for you. So internally here at Techstrong, we thought it was really cool, but it wasn't ready for prime time. We were not about to let a machine publish under our brand without human oversight. We told our writers, no AI, it's your reputation on the line. And, the credibility we've spent years building, well, that's something that's real. But let me tell you what else is real. Sometime last year, September, October, certainly by November, it got real. All of the models got so much better, not just clever, but they became useful, consistent, capable of doing real work. And I'm going to tell you what else happened too at the same time that kind of flipped the switch. Humans, especially us here at Techstrong, we got better at using them. We learned one-shot prompts, two-shot prompts. How do you don't take what it first gives you. How do you stop prompting from being guesswork and make it a skill? We learned how to steer the Gen AI models, how to structure requests, how to get the output that matched your voice. And you know what? As I said, sometime around November, December, man, we weren't playing around anymore with AI. We were collaborating with it. And that was a huge change for us. Now, yeah, there's a lot of AI slop out there. And we tried not to let that go through the filters. But there's tons of AI slop out there. It's low-quality garbage that's flooding the internet. It's low-quality bug reports that are flooding open source projects. But there's a part that we don't acknowledge, and that is that AI has dramatically increased the output. It's increased the output of content. It's increased the output of code. It increases the output of everything we point it towards. We're just publishing a lot more content. We're making a lot more code. We're doing a lot more things. And not all of it's bad. Most of it's really good, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing for us, quite frankly, because the amount of AI-related content out there has forced us to widen our aperture to cover all this stuff. It's insane the amount of news coming out that we got to keep up with. So without leveraging AI and some of these tools, we couldn't keep up with it. And that was fine up until a couple of weeks ago. With the launch of OpenClaw, another switch flipped, and this might be a bigger switch in the long run, and that's agentic AI, right? Up until that point, agentic AI was a tougher sell, let's face it. You know what? Up until that point, my attitude is, agents suck. They were hard to use, didn't do what they promised. I just didn't see it ready for prime time. look, what they say they claim to do sounded incredible. Autonomous agents and software that could do tasks for you, not just chat. But they sucked. So we spent some time babysitting them more than the time that you spent babysitting was more time than they saved you, and it wasn't good. It's just easy to do the work yourself. But it's part of our charter here at Techstrong, right? It's news. We covered it. We told you about it. But internally, I couldn't sell that. It was like, selling ice to Eskimos. I couldn't get that out the door. But as I said, OpenClaw came in, I guess maybe a month and a half ago now, and that really was the oh God moment. Suddenly, these agents became usable, accessible, dangerous, but in the best possible way. People started saying, and a lot of my friends, people who hadn't coded in 20 years, people, serial entrepreneurs who were retired already, came out of the woodwork, started saying, I feel like I could build anything. It re-energized people. And that's the thing I've seen. The people who are in on this agents thing, they have like a look in their eye, like they're almost manic, because the promise of what it does and what they're doing with it has them like, it's almost like an endorphin kind of, or a caffeine kind of hit. So for us here at Techstrong, though, it really started with me pushing one of our producers to try it. He was a smart guy, somewhat security aware, not easily impressed, jaded even. He resisted. I get it. Giving an autonomous system access to your machine should make you a little nervous. But I pushed him. I said, if you don't do it, I'm going to do it. And eventually, he went out, he did it. He put a Mac Mini, we got him a Mac Mini, he installed it. And that one machine here triggered a tsunami. Within days, we had the next team member getting their own Mac Mini and setting their own agent set up, their own instance set up. Before you know it, more Mac Minis starts popping up all over the place. Before you know it, you can't buy Mac Minis. They're hard to get. We experimented. This is pure open source, learning how to lock them down, how to manage permissions, what APIs you're going to need, what could it do, what could it not do, how to connect them to the tools that we're already using. Do we need MCP servers? And then the magic moment happened, another magic moment. These agents, they started talking back. They started doing real work. They were reading transcripts, watching videos, pushing buttons, drafting posts, editing content, publishing articles, scheduling the updates for us, summarizing the meetings. And I'm not talking about demos or toys. I'm talking about real production work here. Our newsletter's being published like this. Our content is being posted. Here's the key point, though. This didn't mean that everyone stopped working, sat back and let their agents do their job. No one got laid off. People just stopped doing these roto tests, this mind-numbing stuff that used to eat their entire days. The copy-paste workflows, you know what I'm talking about, right? Formatting, uploading, cross-posting, pure administrative overhead kind of stuff. The work that makes you busy, but not valuable. And the agents, that's the first thing they ate, that busy work. But then came yet another wave. And just to show you the timeline, all these waves came in the last 2.5 weeks. We all started reading about Perplexity and this Perplexity computer. Truth be told, we wanted the Perplexity computer personal that runs on its Mac Mini, but that's not available yet. So we shelled out $200 a month and started giving people their own Perplexity computer accounts, those who didn't already have OpenClaw on Mac Mini set up. Now, I know some of you are hearing this and saying, well, $200 a person a month is a lot of money. And I hear it, but I say to you, compared to what? Compared to the fully loaded monthly cost of an employee, like if I hired a coworker? Compared to outsourcing it to somewhere in who knows where in this war-ridden world? Compared to lost productivity of people doing mind-numbing work, $200 starts looking like lunch money to me. Forget lunch money. $200 a month isn't going to buy me lunch all month. It's looking more like coffee money. So I made a deal with my team, and I encourage every CEO and executive out here to make this deal. Anybody who wants it will pay for your Perplexity computer for a month. But in return, this is what I asked of my employees. Give me a weekly report. What did it do for you? What tasks are it doing? How much time did it save? What changed in your day or as a result? As a result of it doing those tasks, what other kind of work were you able to do that you haven't been able to maybe do as well before? We'll look at the 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks of you using that, and at the end of the month, let's decide together, is it worth the $200 a day? For some, it may be worth $300-400 because they're going to use a lot of credits. And I thought, look, half are going to use it and half probably it won't work out. But I got to tell you, it's only been about a week, and the results are already ridiculous. As I mentioned before, we've automated our newsletter production. Our video descriptions get generated. Social posts are queuing up. Articles moving through our publishing editorial process so much faster. Whole web pages, forget it, websites designed and deployed being done. We got something for next week in RSA that you're going to love on Security Boulevard. Meeting agendas are being summarized before the meetings even start. And we're just warming up. This is just a week. How sales is using it, marketing, operations, video, editorial. We're looking at learning events, the webinars, our internal ops. Everything is being rewritten, rethought, redone in lightning speed right now. We're looking at stuff we haven't questioned in years. Some accounts that haven't been changed since 2013. And you know what? We're looking at saying they're optional. I don't know if we need to do that. Our whole sort of ZAP system of how we integrate stuff, is it something we're going to use going forward? I don't know. Personally, myself, I'm using my agent to triage my email, manage the chaos that is my calendars. I'm streamlining the workflows that used to drain hours out of my day every day. Now they're all going on in the background. When I check my email at 6:30 in the morning, I have everything all taken care of here. But let me stop here for a second. I know what a lot of you are saying. Shimmy, this is great. I bet you're going to fire half the team. No, absolutely not. We didn't lay anyone off. We didn't fire no one. Let me be crystal clear here. This really isn't about layoffs. It's about leverage. It's leveraging good employees to 10x themselves. Because a lesson I've learned in my career is you give smart people tools that multiply their output and then just stand back and watch what happens. Instead of grinding through 10 hours of routine work, they spend those hours on strategy, creativity, problem solving, thinking of new and better ways of getting stuff done. That's the stuff humans are good at, and it's actually going to be the stuff we continue being good at. There is a flip side. I'm going to acknowledge it. Not everyone is thrilled. Some people are uneasy. Some people are skeptical. Some people are just so stuck in their ways they don't want to accept new things. They just don't want to learn something new. They're very happy in their little routines that they live in. And I get that too. Change is scary for people, especially if you've been doing the same thing over and over for a while, right? Especially when it feels like the ground under your feet is shifting and it's all you can do to just stay up without falling down. But I'm going to be really honest with you here as a CEO, founder of a company, multi-time. If your job can be dramatically enhanced by these tools and you refuse to use them, you're making yourself very much less valuable, very much an optional person or an optional part of the organization. Not necessarily because the company wants fewer people or less salaries. I mean, there are some companies that'll do that, but it's because the world outside the company is moving just as fast as we are here at Techstrong. You can't freeze time by ignoring it, wishing it away, or closing your eyes. Let me tell you about my favorite moment so far with this whole experiment. We've got a young editor here. He's been here, he's worked here 45 years with us. I called him in, told him I wanted him to use this, and he told me flat out there was no way that AI could publish directly to WordPress. He's tried it, it doesn't work. It'll never replace him, forget about it. Too complicated, too many formatting issues, not feasible. We debated, and a healthy argument, and I say that. It was an argument. I don't know how healthy it was, but we banged heads. And, I said, well, just do me a favor. Try this anyway. Just for giggles. Later that afternoon, I poked my head into his office and said, hey, how's it going? He looked at me very calmly and said, I just reinvented our entire publishing process. And that's when I knew how big this was. That's when I knew this was real. That's when I knew this is going to stick. In tech, we always talk about eating your own dog food, using your own product before asking customers to trust it. What we're doing here goes beyond that. We're not just eating this dog food. Our people are howling at the moon. Because once you see what's possible, you can't unsee it. You start looking at every process, every task, every meeting, and you're asking the same question of it. Is this something I should be doing? Is this a job for a human, or can I get the agent to do it? Again, not in a dystopian, let's cut jobs way, but in a practical way. Humans should be doing work that's worthy of humans. So my friends, here's the deal. If Techstrong is any indication of what's going on out there, these next few months are going to be wild. Entire job descriptions will shift. Entire ways of doing business will disappear and reappear. New roles will appear. Old workflows will disappear. Companies that adapt are going to accelerate through this and really take off. But companies that hesitate are going to feel like they're standing still while everyone else is moving at warp speed. And this is the thing. This isn't hidden. It's not theoretical. It's not 10 years away. It's not, well, we'll see it when we believe it. It's sitting on your desk right now. Right now, you can get started, and every day you don't get started is a day you're wasting. So here's my advice to you, especially if you're in leadership. Stop debating whether this is real. It's real. It's not perfect, but it's real. Stop waiting for permission. Stop assuming someone else is going to figure it out first and you could piggyback it. Start experimenting right now. Start learning right now. Break things, build things. Push the tools until they fail and then learn why and fix them. Because the people who master this early, they're not just going to be a little bit ahead. They're going to look like they were teleported into the future and you're riding a horse. Because the future doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it just shows up quietly and logs onto your computer and waits for instructions. Don't miss the knock of opportunity here. Embrace AI, embrace agentic AI. We're doing it, and I'm really, really happy we are. I'm Shimmy, and that's what Shimmy Says. I'll see you next week. I'll be live at RSA for Shimmy Says.
Shimmy says, shimmy says, shimmy, shimmy, shimmy says, ask me almost anything.
Is AWS partnering with a three-headed dog? Cisco gets a 10 that they really didn't want. Dell digs into AI at GTC. CrowdStrike does too. Nutanix is also doing stuff with AI. Zscaler goes for global compliance, and we're going to listen to the king of AI getting even bigger in this week's episode of the Tech Field Day Rundown. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Tech Field Day Rundown. For March the 18th, we're very glad that you all survived St. Patrick's Day to join us here on National Oatmeal Cookie Day. And I have a hot take. Oatmeal cookies are actually not that bad. I think that what most people hate is the raisins that are in them. But joining me is someone who is the best cookie ingredient around, a new co-host, Mr. Dave Graham. Dave, it's good to meet you.
Yeah, likewise. Great to be here, Tom.
Well, we're very happy that you could join us on National Sloppy Joe Day, if oatmeal cookies are not your thing. But what is not sloppy is all of the great news that we have, because it is all about all of the cool stuff that's going on in the industry but also NVIDIA GTC, which is eating up all of the oxygen in the room. And we're going to have several stories talking about that, but also some other fun stuff. So make sure that you are seatbelted in. Amazon Web Services and Cerebras Systems announced a new collaboration to speed up AI inferencing in the cloud. The architecture combines AWS Trianium processors with Cerebras's wafer-scale AI systems and will be delivered through Amazon Bedrock. By splitting inference workloads across specialized processors, the companies aim to dramatically improve response speed for demanding AI applications such as coding assistance and real-time AI services. Dave, I guess my question here is we've seen a lot of talk about what Cerebras can do to accelerate all of this stuff. Do you think that Amazon is going to be offering this as kind of a basic solution offering, or is this going to cost you if you want to go with what Cerebras has to offer?
Little column A, little column B, potentially little column C. I mean, it's about time for Cerebras to be adopted into something that's a little bit more mainstream than just their own cloud or some, hypo neo cloud and regions that we shall not mention at the current date and time. So, yeah, that was very exciting. And entree into Bedrock means that they're going to have a pretty good cadre of folks that they can draw from that will be able to kind of tap into their services, and we'll see what the outset is. I mean, it may be a little bit spendy on the onset of this, but as as users scale up, it's a possibility it's going to drive some revenue down. So, I'm pretty stoked about that for them, and we'll see what happens. All right. So critical vulnerability accepts accepts all of us, but affecting Cisco Catalyst SD-WAN controllers could allow remote attackers to bypass authentication and gain administrative access. The flaw, tracked as CVE 2026-20127, pretty fancy there, carries a CVSS score of 10 out of, I'm assuming 10, and may allow attackers to manipulate SD-WAN network configurations. Cisco has released patches and recommends organizations update immediately and review logs for suspicious access. So, Tom, in the compendium of CVEs doing bad things or highlighting bad things that have happened within the SD-WAN or, let's say, the networking security space, what is this one like?
Well, it got a 10.0 from the folks over at the research facility, but I heard it got an 8.7 from the Russian judge, which is par for the course. Look, we're dealing with more and more of these 9 and above CVSS scores for a simple reason. It's because the attackers are not just looking to breach systems. They're not looking for footholds anymore. They're looking to immediately manipulate the access that they get to do something with it. And that's because the dwell time on these breaches is starting to shrink significantly. And that is both a good and a bad thing, as you could probably tell. The good news about that is that when people get access, we're immediately detecting it and being able to shut down their access to laterally move through the systems and do all kinds of things that they're not supposed to. We like that. The bad news is that means that the people who do find these vulnerabilities are immediately motivated to do the kinds of things like we're seeing here, where they can bypass authentication. And they were able to translate that into the ability to jump into the configuration and basically do things that they weren't supposed to do. And this is a problem because in a Cisco device, you really want the control plane and the data plane to be separated from each other, right? If I can get administrator access to the device and I can do all kinds of control plane stuff, woohoo, that's good, because that means that I don't affect the data path. So in the event that something were to happen, maybe I could modify some configurations or do things that I weren't supposed to. But ultimately, the device is still going to be able to forward traffic, which is what it's supposed to do. But if I can get in and I can do this configuration manipulation thing, that is a problem because now I'm affecting the data plane and I can knock these things out and I create denial of service without the need for doing massive packet generation. So as my good friend Bob Planker says, patch, 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 patch. You want to make sure that you're up to date. And you also want to make sure that your logs are showing that people aren't actively exploiting this, because that's the other thing too. You can get this patched, but you know that if people were able to get in and do something with it, you now are going to have to audit all of your configs and you might find yourself a tempting target in the near future. So please patch what you can and make sure that you're missing the triple axle on this so your score goes all the way down. Right.
Good Olympics reference there.
Yeah, I do my best.
Yeah.
We're going to jump into the first of our many stories about GTC this week. Dell Technologies announced new additions to its AI infrastructure portfolio during NVIDIA GTC, including a data orchestration engine designed to help organizations prepare and manage data for AI applications at scale. The updates also support NVIDIA's Blackwell GPUs and new AI frameworks aimed at simplifying how enterprises deploy AI across cloud, edge, and on-premises environments. Dave, what's Dell's in here to be a part of the bigger NVIDIA ecosystem?
I mean, Dell has been foaming at the mouth to be part of infrastructure, anything to do with AI. I mean, this has been Jeff Clark's kind of mantra for, I don't know, I'm an alma mater, Dell's my alma mater. So looking back at that, he's been talking about this for a long time, right? So any of the introductions they do in this particular space are going to be trying to shift the energy away from bespoke, bits and piece build type things to monolithic infrastructures that are encompass server, storage, networking, and compute, right? And then that soft, squishy layer of software that sits on top of it. So when you start to talk about these, application layers or AI frameworks, right? This is a huge investment by Dell in terms of making the bits and pieces talk and work together in ways that are now above the stack. Dell's always done hardware. Dell knows how to do hardware. It's table stakes at this point. But I think that differentiation point for them is really focusing their energy on now software now defines the AI era in ways that it never has. And oh yeah, don't forget that little data piece that, they spent a large quantity of dollars on when they bought EMC back in 2016, right? That's the legacy kind of paying it forward finally, in my opinion. So yeah, really exciting to see Dell kind of step in this space. I think it's I'm gonna keep on saying it's probably about damn time that they get some metal behind it, and pun intended, I suppose, in that case. But yeah, so there we go. Moving on to the joys of more security software. So CrowdStrike is expanding its collaboration with NVIDIA to bring more AI agents into managed detection and response services. So they announced at NVIDIA GTC the partnership, which includes new agentic AI capabilities, integrates a secure by design AI blueprint into NVIDIA's OpenShell, and uses NVIDIA Nemotron models to accelerate cybersecurity investigations and improve detection accuracy. This move highlights how security teams are increasingly using AI to defend against attackers, while also working to secure the growing number of AI agents deployed inside modern enterprises. As long as those modern enterprises don't resemble an airline that we know has affected them in the past. So, Tom, again, hot take here. AI as actors, AI as middleware, AI as something you're going to have to protect and enable, right? So what's CrowdStrike doing here? That's kind of moving the dial a bit.
I think CrowdStrike is really trying to tell their customers that they are integrated into what NVIDIA is offering so that their customers don't try to jump to the next thing. So one of the things you talked about was OpenShell, which is NVIDIA's big announcement that they're going to try to offer solutions that will prevent things from like OpenClaw from being able to operate in your network with full autonomy. We're not just building guardrails now, we're putting up lobster fences everywhere. And I think that the important thing that people need to understand is that this is going to happen. Whether you want it to or not, people are installing OpenClaw and they are working with it and they're working on the successors. And it's funny to me that there has been a huge run on Mac Minis over the last 3 months because people's methodology for creating these guardrails right now is to have it running on its own machine so that it is effectively air-gapped from the rest of what you want it to touch. Because as we've seen and as we've reported on a number of occasions over the last 90 days, this thing really does kind of act on its own, and it has agency and it has motivation to go out and do things. And you really have to give it these limitations. And we talked about one of them last week with Chris Grundeman, this iron curtain idea that it can slam shut to prevent things from getting in the way. But now NVIDIA is essentially admitting that OpenClaw has moved the needle, and they are going to try to build guardrails around it while still allowing it to work, which of course is NVIDIA's way of saying, we would really love it if you would use our software to help guard against an agent we didn't develop. And CrowdStrike is jumping in there by saying, hey, we're going to take NVIDIA and OpenClaw and we're going to work together on that. But that's not the only thing, right? Like that is probably the one thing that people at home will recognize. But for enterprise users of CrowdStrike, they're going to be leveraging all of these new inputs to help detect attackers more quickly. And also the fact that attackers are going to start using AI to leverage new attack vectors and things like that. Because we've already seen that right from Claude. Being able to scan and do a whole bunch of other stuff. We covered that on Security Boulevard a few weeks ago. I just think it's fascinating that now there's this arms race in AI inside of security to leverage it, to beat it being used to attack you. And I don't know how that's ultimately going to shake out, but time will tell. Hey, look, it's another story about GTC. This time we're going to be talking about Nutanix because guess what? They have new capabilities for securely running AI agents within their enterprise AI platform. Built with support from NVIDIA tools and models, the platform allows organizations to deploy and manage AI agents across on-premises, hybrid, and self-managed cloud environments while also maintaining stronger control over security, networking, and infrastructure costs. I got to ask you, Dave, what value are people getting from running all of this on Nutanix?
I think you're seeing the same theme that we saw with Dell, and we see with pretty much everybody in this space is going to be announcing some way to orchestrate or manage or deploy or when it comes to AI and agents or models or whatever. Uh, the interesting thing that Nutanix brings to the table, which I think in this day and age where we haven't really talked about hyper-converged infrastructures for a long, long time, right? It's kind of gone the way of the dodo bird relative to marketing and intent. But Nutanix has just been quietly plugging right along and selling sleds, man. Like they've been doing a really good job of this. Is they have invested so much in their software ecosystem around hardware is table stakes these days. No one really is. To be fair, the innovation that's coming within the compute cycles is really rather limited. It's operating in epochs and cycles. But where you're seeing that is the folks that have sat down and they developed the software ecosystem, that container to AHV, right? That Nutanix threw themselves at as an alternative way back in the day to the Broadcom VMware takeover. That kind of rolling forward. They spent so much time in that they've kind of almost accidentally, but maybe on purpose, laid the foundation for this incredible infrastructure now that enables them to do things. Like it's tightly coupled, it's very, it's flexible, it's, all these things you just mentioned, OpenClaw. Like again, there's variations of OpenClaw now that run in, that you can isolate and put in containers, right? You propagate that out. I think IronClaw maybe is one of those. NanoClaw, I think, is another one. But anyway, any of these kind of permutations, right? So the idea behind this is, hey, listen, and Nutanix has been playing the game for decade plus at this point, and they're continuing that kind of rolling forward plan. They have a great platform, they have great software, the hardware's great, no complaints there. So I think this is again just another turn of the cycle for Nutanix that's hopefully going to pay off really, really well for them. I mean, they're the dark horse that not a lot of folks talk about, but they've just been quietly winning in the back end. So hands off to them. All right. It's not a name that I have a lot of friends that actually work for this next company, and it's again, it's out there. It's not a tabletop name, but Zscaler's been doing some interesting stuff. They hired a really good friend of mine who's in the research space now, and they're expanding their data sovereignty capabilities as a consequence, and going into this zero trust exchange platform to help enterprises meet and grow against regulatory requirements. So the updates that they've introduced include regional controls, local encrypted traffic inspection, and enhanced compliance features designed to keep sensitive data within national boundaries while maintaining global cloud security performance. Now, there are a lot of buzzwords in that particular story, but in this day and age where geopolitics, dare I say it, are a very large concern, and data sovereignty, dare I say, OPSEC being kind of something you want to make sure is clean, Zscaler's kind of rising to the charge there. So how is Zscaler differentiating themselves against, some of our other compatriots in this particular security space like CrowdStrike and Cisco at all?
It's the trust but verify model. And that only matters to you when an auditor shows up at your front door with a bunch of papers that you are going to then have to justify, because that is one of the key things that you have to worry about with data sovereignty. And kids, when you hear the word data sovereignty, you should hear it with a German accent, because that is what most of these data sovereignty features are designed to do. I jokingly told somebody the other day, if I want to know the opinion of how a piece of security software works, I'm going to call my German friends, because, oh my God, those guys are very serious about this. Data sovereignty is becoming the new security buzzword for these kinds of SD-WAN and SASE providers. The reason for that is because the countries that want to make very sure that their data does not traverse certain sovereign borders. If you think back a few years, it's like, I want to make sure that my data doesn't end up in China. And now for some people, it's, I want to make sure my data doesn't go through the US. Well, how do you know that it didn't? Because when you have a lot of these automated systems that are in place that are trying to make sure, oh, well, I'm using the cheapest transit links over here. Well, I can do that through path selection influence, right? Like, I can make the paths between my data center in Reston and some other places a lot cheaper overnight, so that the data does traverse through those locations. And depending on how the rules for data sovereignty are set up, if it traversed through my data center, I get to scan it on the way through and on the way out, right? I know that sounds really, really suspicious, but do you remember a point when YouTube melted down about 10 years ago because somebody made a mistake in BGP and forced the global internet traffic through Pakistan? Do you think that was an accident? Because it wasn't an accident. That's also why it's important to do things like encryption and stuff like that, because even if those links they accidentally traverse in an area where it's not, you want to make sure that the data is protected as it transits through those links. But again, it comes back to the data sovereignty pieces are not just making sure that the data is going where it's supposed to. It's the verification steps to show that it stayed where it was supposed to, that it never left these boundaries. Because one of the things that we see a lot with a lot of the EU strictures that are in place to make sure that data is staying where it's supposed to and it's not being exposed to places that could cause harm is that their fines have real teeth. Like, this isn't the thing of like, if you've ever heard it in the US, if the only punishment for a crime is a fine, then it's legal for a fee. In the EU, especially with things like GDPR, yeah, if you screw that up, you get fined like 5% of your total like revenue for the year for every infraction. That is painful on purpose. So for organizations, again, read that in a German accent, that want to make sure that the data stays within the borders of a sovereign nation, Germany, this gives those auditors proof that it never left. And that's really what most people are wanting. And I think Zscaler is kind of stepping out there and really planting a flag in the ground, saying, if you want to make sure that you're secure, if you want to make sure that all of your data sovereignty is verifiable, go with us, because we'll make it easy for you. All right. We have a story we need to take a closer look at. I'm going to give you 3 guesses, and the first 2 don't count. Because at GTC 2026, everyone's favorite jacket salesman, Jensen Huang, projected $1 trillion in orders for Blackwell and Vera Rubin AI systems through 2027. Hey, wait, that's next year. The announcement highlights the explosive demand for agentic AI and advanced GPU infrastructure, including new Grok 3 LPUs, upcoming Kyber rack systems, and some freaky AI inferencing related to graphics cards that we're not going to talk about. The focus on high performance inference and energy efficiency signals NVIDIA's continuing dominance in the AI computing and next generation autonomous application space. Now, Dave, we all knew that this was going to be a big deal because NVIDIA is the #1 company in the world. They are the leader by far, and it feels like they're just stepping on the gas pedal to accelerate away. But most of the comments that I have heard from people that are on the ground at GTC, including our very own Alistair Cook, said that it was a 2-hour keynote that really could have been a 1-hour keynote because it felt like an hour of it was just NVIDIA telling you how awesome they were. So let's talk about this. Can anybody catch NVIDIA?
I think it's, NVIDIA made some tactical decisions up front. Again, I think similar to the Nutanix story, right? They made some tactical decisions up front to invest very, very heavily in that software ecosystem. I mean, hardware became table stakes to them. They know the cycles that it takes to do good EDA and to get it out to Foundry and get it back, right? So they invested very, very heavily in this software ecosystem. They made it almost indispensable, right? Almost indistinguishable from their hardware product, right? And so that investment is paying them dividends. People use their hardware because their software is that good. Now, we're seeing some differentiation. There's certainly folks that are nipping at the heels. I think the Grok thing is very interesting. That's Grok with a Q, not Grok with a K, because, read that in a German accent, pun intended. There's, that acquisition or that acqui-hire, if you will, it becomes interesting because it's the acknowledgement that core silicon is not always going to win. The general purpose, the GP in GPU is general purpose. And, there's this idea that some of these, competitors, small or large, are outthinking some of the fringing areas that we're starting to experiment with, right? Everything is converging at SLMs now versus large language models. Small language models are starting to come up. We're starting to see those being embedded. So I think there's an acknowledgement that NVIDIA, yes, is the predominant player, the 800-pound gorilla that copped something from, the register back in the day. But there is opportunities, and there's always going to be opportunities within the market. So yeah, whether it be a 2-hour marketecture that could have been an hour type conversation or whatever, it's good to hear the optimism, especially given, again, geopolitical concerns and compression and supply chain issues that are things that are going on right now. But at the same time, I think there's enough white space between those lines to say, NVIDIA is leading today. They may be leading in through 2027. They may be leading into 2028, but there's always opportunity. And there's certainly folks like, that shall not be named that will be able to take advantage of those particular things. I mean, your opinions on that for sure.
This is NVIDIA's market to lose, but I don't think NVIDIA is going to have to worry about someone coming up to take their market share. I think they have bigger concerns. And this you can see from all the moves that they're making. This is less about whether or not AMD or any other companies are going to come up behind them and take anything, and more about how do I keep the money printer printing. Because this is something I mentioned to my friends, and this kind of cracked me up. Do you remember when we were kids and everything was futuristic and robotic and awesome and, autonomous this and that? And do you know what they call autonomous vehicles and robots now? It's physical AI. No, it's not. It's robots. It's autonomous vehicles. It's self-driving cars. Don't rebrand it to put your friggin' trademark all over it. Look, I get it. You guys don't want the money printer to stop because every $1 trillion that you make off of all of these things is another $1 trillion that you can use to, fix the Wi-Fi at the NVIDIA headquarters. Shout out to my friend John Kilpatrick. But more importantly, this is the thing. You've got to start shoving your stuff into everything, because if you don't, people are going to realize they don't need your stuff. That's one of the problems that a lot of people are looking at right now is, what am I using AI for? A lot of people are using AI for a lot of things. And I have lived through this before, because I remember a time not so long ago, it was probably about 10 years ago, when everything had to have a software-defined networking component. We had to shove software-defined networking into everything. And it all had to run on x86 hardware because that's what DPDK was optimized for. And where are we now? Oh yeah, that's right. Everything has a DPU that runs on ARM because it turns out you don't need all that heavyweight stuff. Now, a lot of the things that we built through software-defined networking are applicable now because we've abstracted what was important away from it. But yes, for those of you youngins who just got started in the field and are working on your prompt engineering skills, all of this has happened before, and all of this really will happen again. Do I think that Jensen is going to sell $1 trillion worth of CPUs and GPUs and DPUs and IPUs and PUPUs? Yes. He's going to sell all of it, and all of the RAM and all of the hard drives that are out there are going to continue to be ridiculously expensive until something magical happens and someone invents the next big thing. And I don't know what it's going to be. It's quantum computers. We're going to detect alien life. Someone's going to build a slightly faster cell phone that consumes a little less battery power. Whatever it is, when it happens, everyone is going to shift. You know why? Because that is the pattern, because it always happens. This is the hottest, exciting, best, newest thing. Look, something shiny. Yoink, off we go. AI will persist in the way that it is, and NVIDIA will be the only buggy whip manufacturer at that point. And they'll be happy. You know why? Because IBM still sells mainframes, and they're really good at it. And nobody's breaking into the mainframe market right now because nobody wants to. Dave, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, hard to argue with that passion there, Tom. Like, just ground source passion and belief. It's almost like you're a fundamentalist of the NVIDIA church. Uh, that being said, yeah, again, it's an opportunity that can be lost. It can be lost through spending too much time and looking in the rearview mirror and wondering what competitors are catching up to you. And so I think this is where Jensen, we've made the comparisons to VMware over the decades, right? You need the founder mentality, you need the Diane Greens in there to start things up, then you need that kind of visionary, you need the Paul Moritz that's in there to stir some shit up and do some interesting things, right? And then you need a business person that's in there that's executing to plan. And whether you consider Pat Gelsinger that person or not, it's beside the point. He's a business guy. So I think you kind of have the same rotation going on. And Jensen's always been at the helm, but he's surrounded himself with incredible people that are pushing the needle for him, right? It's like, the acquisition of Mellanox. And these are calculated moves and pushing into it. It's interesting to note the areas where he hasn't spent a ton of money, specifically in storage space, which is like kind of an ironic thing. Because when you start to look at the storage market, when you start to look at what drives AI, when you start to look at what drives the need for silicon and all these things, it's driven by data. So they've spent a lot of time on making sure that the doors open, the windows open, the building's made, all the plumbing works and whatever. But they also have the data is people problem, right? It's that, how are you going to manage that influx? How are you going to manage that inflow? And so, the participation in LLMD and all the other fun stuff they're doing with Dynamo and Nixel and that kind of thing. It's great. And we have folks from Vast and Weka, and they made a huge amount of announcements on it. But it's the one niche in their portfolio that they haven't really filled with anything. They haven't acquired anything. They haven't over-rotated. So I would say that $1 trillion is going to be great. You can spend all the money in the world on that silicon, and you can do that. And again, they're going to lead the market. Again, to your point, it's theirs to lose. But they need to backfill some of these spots, and I'm looking for them to, if I'm going to prognosticate, maybe it's again in the white space of what Jensen didn't say. I'm looking for them to try to fill that storage portfolio and fill it a little bit tighter and a little bit closer, maybe within the next year. It's going to be in software. It's not going to be in hardware, because Jensen also understands the political pressure to keep supply chains going in one way or the other, whether it be sovereign U.S. semiconductorism is in fabrication facilities or, Asia concerns right now in terms of saber rattling and whatnot. Jensen's a smart dude. He's gonna pay attention, and he's gonna surround himself with people that know where they can fill those buckets from. So I don't know. It's gonna be an interesting couple of years to see what he does. But at least in the short term, we got some predictability. We got some there's some money that needs to be printed, and some AI inflation that's gonna probably occur as a result of it. But yeah.
One other thing that is predictable is all of the great stuff that we're doing here at Tech Field Day. And guess what, kids? It's going to be a busy month coming up, because I'm going to be really busy. Next week, I'm going to be out in San Francisco for RSAC. We're going to be doing Tech Field Day Extra there Monday and Tuesday. We're going to have live streaming video from companies like Veeam, Object First, and Commvault. Make sure you head over to techfieldday.com to check those out on the 23rd and the 24th. And then I'm going to go home, do my laundry, and go back after Easter for the Networking Field Day Experience number 40. We are officially in Roman numeral territory, folks. We have a very packed lineup. schedules on techfieldday.com. We're going to have lots of great presentations, new faces in the delegate panel. You're not going to want to miss that. Week after that, Stephen Foskett is back on the road for the Tech Field Day experience at Click Connect. Make sure you stay tuned because some of the videos that they're going to be recording while they're on site will be published on our website. There won't be any live streaming, but don't worry, you won't miss any of that fun action. And then at the end of April, I'm going to be back in Silicon Valley for Security Field Day. And we have some fun presentations lined up. We've still got some more companies that we're looking to add to our website at techfieldday.com. You're not going to want to miss that. Just like I am probably going to miss home for quite a while. But the home for all of the things that Dave Graham is talking about, where can I find that, sir?
So, I work for a technical standards organization called ML Commons Association. You can find us at mlcommons.org. We're doing a presentation this week at GTC, talking about what's coming next in the benchmarking for generative AI space. So stay tuned to that. A couple of bits and pieces going on from there. But I'm around. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on ML Commons and, always in the community here at Tech Field Day.
Well, we thank you very much for joining us today, Dave. And we thank you all for watching the Tech Field Day Rundown. You can catch new episodes every Wednesday on YouTube or in your favorite podcast application of choice. Rundown is also being streamed on Techstrong TV, and you can catch myself and many of our other fun folks on many Techstrong and Future Group programs like the Security Boulevard podcast and the Techstrong Gang. We're going to be back next Wednesday. Well, I won't, but Al will be back next Wednesday with a new co-host to talk about all the IT news of the week that was. Until then, for myself, for Dave Graham, and all the great people that help us out here at Tech Field Day, thank you very much, and go have an oatmeal cookie.
My name is Chad Smith. I'm the Field CTO of Alliances here at Hammerspace. And today I'm going to give you a demonstration of Hammerspace running both on-prem and cloud, kind of a hybrid solution. I decided on doing demos instead of slides today because a lot of you have a lot of experience in hearing about Hammerspace, talking about it, but not actually seeing it in action. So I went ahead and recorded a couple demos I'd like to share with you guys today. So today I'm going to present you guys with 4 demos. They're covering various topics such as assimilation, global file systems, Year Zero, as well as our S3 interface and metadata. So let's jump into the first demo. So the first demo is really all about data in place assimilation. We're going to walk through the process of setting up storage assimilation, shares, storage systems, volumes, and mounts. We're going to spend a little bit of time discussing Hammerspace snapshot efficiencies tied to third-party storage and APIs. We're going to briefly discuss multi-protocol access via SMB to an assimilated NFS server. And then finally, we'll conclude our first demo with what it takes to set up a global file system across sites. So let's jump into it. I'm going to start this video, and I'm going to pause it frequently to discuss some aspects of the solution. So out of the gate, what you're looking at right now is the Hammerspace UI. It actually runs on the Anvil server itself. So as long as you point your browser to the Anvil's IP address, you're going to get to the Hammerspace interface. This is a relatively fresh cluster installed on an on-premise environment. And the only thing I'm going to show you guys that I took the liberty of installing is I just attached it to Active Directory. And the reason why I did that is because we'll be using SMB access throughout this demo. I wanted to make sure that cross-site SMB access is set up correctly. So to start the actual data in place assimilation process, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an empty share called collections. So within our UI, I'm just going to type in the name of it, Then I'm going to go ahead and set a snapshot schedule on this as well. The reason why I'm doing this is because we're going to talk a little bit more about snapshots later on in this demo. Once the share is created, I'm going to go ahead and add a storage system. I'm going to call it images, and we're just going to add a simple description of what it is. I'm going to pause real fast and talk about our API interoperability to third-party storage solutions. Really, what makes it really efficient is that a Hammerspace file can live on multiple third-party storage platforms. But when it does live on a particular platform, we want to take advantage of its snapshotting and clone efficiencies for its copy on write. So what we have is deep API integrations into that storage to allow us to gain that storage efficiency, regardless of where it lives.
Jack Pauler with Paradigm Technica. So a couple questions on that. You're talking about when you say copy on write and third-party storage, are you talking about, and you talked about a Hammerspace file. First, define what you mean by Hammerspace file versus the native files.
Sure. So Hammerspace writes its files out in what's called a cone-structured file system. Okay, that file system itself is basically our structure that we understand, but the third-party storage system may not necessarily understand, even though it may reside, let's say, on a power scale. It is our cone-structured file system on it. Now, what we want to do is we want to get the efficiencies out of that third-party storage. Right. We want to use its space efficiencies and copy on write.
Okay. So when you're talking about the copy on write snapshots, clone efficiencies, you're talking about leveraging the third-party storage system's native capability.
That's right.
Okay.
Yes. But you got to understand, our files can live on multiple storage systems.
Right.
Each one will use its third-party integration to manage the storage efficiencies beneath the file system itself.
Right. And then when you're talking about Hammerspace files, that means that, if I understand you correctly, when a user is interfacing through the Hammerspace's global namespace, that user can see the existing files, but if they say they're going to create a new file, right, it's going to be a Hammerspace file that's then stored in some underlying storage that may be a third party. Right? But it may that new file isn't necessarily native to it wouldn't reside, let's say, on your power scale as a file native side by side with the existing.
Correct. Yes, that's correct. Yeah, so that's what we refer to as data placement simulation. We're not going to move the files or modify the files until it's a modification or a creation or whatever happens after the initial assimilation. Then we'll change the file structure to a Hammerspace specific structure. You still go through our virtual file system to access the file because we're tracking all those changes. You would never go back through your ISON once you assimilate it.
That's where I was going to go to next. So once you start using Hammerspace, you essentially lose the access through the native interface. To that file.
Okay. We do have a process called de-assimilation, which puts everything back.
Gotcha. Thank you.
All right, let's continue with the demonstration here. So I just showing all the various products that we support. In this particular demonstration now, I'm using a Manila NFS server, just adding the IP address of it. We're scanning all the available volumes on our system. To us, a volume is a mount, right? So that's an interchangeable term with Hammerspace. But we do see a volume on this server called images that resides in the mount images directory on that server. Continue the presentation here. I'm just going to select that volume, hit next steps. Now, it's important I'm selecting the assimilate button. I went through that pretty fast. Let me go ahead and pause that again. But the assimilate button allows us to use the existing storage. We're not going to re-silver that share and use it for net new storage. We're going to use the existing storage that resides under all the files, the directories, and we're going to data in place assimilate that. That's by checking that box allows you to do that.
And what would happen if you didn't check that box?
It would resilver it. It would clean it out, and it would just use it as a storage bucket in essence.
And delete all the data?
It would delete all the data,
Okay.
yeah. You're not assimilating, you're just using that space to put more files into it.
I see.
Can I jump in with that? That's maybe you're going to cover it later, but how does it work with? By the way, Brett Walmerantz. Yeah, this is also to Jack's question. I think you answered. Maybe I misunderstood it, but is it a bit? Some of these flows almost seem like one-way flows.
No, they're bidirectional for sure.
And what I mean is one-way streets in a sense. Like if you assimilate to Hammerspace, you then need to tell everyone stop writing directly.
Yes.
Over there. Is that am I?
Yeah, and because basically what we're going to do is you're going to do a one-time remapping of your data. It happens once, so you're going to your previous PowerScale storage. Now you're basically going to tell your users, or you're going to remap to another drive, and then you're going to continue on, and that is your outage window in theory, is that one-time mapping over. Everything else, as data migrates and moves between multiple systems, I mean, a lot of people use Hammerspace as a migration tool, right? I'm going to go off a NetApp, and I'm going to go to an Isilon.
Yeah.
Well, I can now do this assimilation, and everything seamlessly moving behind the scenes, and the users don't know from one day to the next, is my data actually residing on NetApp, or is it residing on an Isilon? All happens kind of behind the scenes. Once you've added that virtualization layer of the namespace, that all just is part of the solution.
So rather than it being an extended long outage for the migration, what we're essentially saying is you're going to have a 30-second remap to a new drive, and then from then on, the migration is just happening transparently.
Exactly, yes.
Okay. Interesting.
What about availability in those cases then? What kind of solutions do you have for that?
We'll get to that.
Okay.
But you're using the durability and availability that's already existing in the Isilon.
Yeah, sure.
Or the NetApp.
Yeah, that's on the back end, like the front end where you're presenting namespaces, right?
Yeah, so our namespace is all virtualized.
Okay.
And it really depends on, the devil's in the detail. It really depends on what protocol you're using. Because if you're using NFS 4.2, that's all built into the metadata layer that's being presented by the Anvil servers. And we have this notion called a flex file. And a flex file hands out a layout. And that's the directions to where the file is at. And it really kind of gets into the minutia or the details of the solution. But any other protocol that you're using, NFS v3, SMB, CSI driver, and S3, that goes directly to our DSX server. And then that handles any legacy protocols, what we call legacy protocols. And then that's distributed across multiple DSXs with their own virtual IP for each one. So that is how you maintain your high durability across legacy protocols as well. Okay. So I'm just walking through the rest of the add volumes installation wizard here. Okay. And in a moment, we will see it show up. There it is. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go back to that empty directory that we had previously created. And now what's happening behind the scenes is this data in place assimilation process. It's running in the background right now. It's walking the file system. It's collecting all the metadata itself. It's not moving the data. It's just collecting the metadata. It does take a couple minutes to happen. This is running on a couple instances in the cloud, so it's not the fastest thing. But as you can see, we're already discovering directories, right? We can go inside a directory, and lo and behold, you can actually now see the files, right? So there's all my files. It's updating right now, and as you can see, it just finished with 14K files it just discovered on the system, right? What we're going to do real fast is we're going to go ahead and check it. Can I have access to that? And the interesting thing to note, too, this is an NFS server accessing through SMB. So there's your bimodal multi-protocol access out of the box, NFS server connecting via SMB. Right, and that's what we're going to verify and check. Can we have access to these files? So I'm quickly going into the directory. I'm looking at one of the directories, and there's a file. That's a permissions issue from an earlier lab. But now I can go into this one, click on the file, and there it is. I can see the image. So now I can access this assimilated storage from an SMB share. Now, the next thing I'm going to do.
I have a question regarding permissions. At Bellavance. So I probably have permissions defined on the file system that exists on target storage.
Yes.
How are those permissions assimilated by Hammer?
They are assimilated.
Okay.
I guess that's the that's the answer.
Mess with those permissions.
Yeah, no, everything gets migrated over. You know, all your file permissions gets carried over. We have an RC 2307 mapping that happens that will map SMB permissions to NFS permissions, and I can't really go into too much details about it right now, but rest assured that it does get migrated over.
Going forward, as I start using Hammerspace to manage that portion of my file system, do the permissions get written back to that storage device? So if someone wanted to make an end run around Hammerspace to that isolon,
well, they won't even see the files because we're also laying our cone-structured file system across the files. Every file becomes a UUID. And within that UUID becomes the payload of file that's in a chunked format.
Okay, so even if they did directly attach to the storage device and try to enumerate files, they wouldn't have permission.
They would have a very difficult time trying to figure it out.
Okay, so really at that point, the only way to get to the files is through the Hammerspace interface, and that's what is enforcing permissions and access control.
That's correct, yes.
Awesome. All right, thank you.
But to be clear, that rewriting of the file into the new cone file system, that only happens when the file's changed.
Modified or written or changed, yeah. Well, because that's data in place assimilation. Now, you can set a read-only policy where you keep your file in place, read and then set an objective, which we haven't really talked about, but those are the rules for data movement, to put it in another location, in another volume. So our professional services team generally will make an assimilated share read-only, and then on that same storage system, make a new mount where all the new data gets dropped into.
I see. Okay.
So there's different ways that you can address this. It really depends on the customer's use cases and situation. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do right now is I'm going to prepare this on-prem cluster for the cloud. And this is the beginning process of setting up the global file system between two sites. The way that we do that is we use a bucket in the middle or an object storage in the middle to facilitate that transfer of the data. So in this next demo is just me walking through, adding another storage system, but this time we're going to be connecting to some S3 object storage in US West 1 in this example. This is a little bit of a laborious process. I do apologize. It does take a little bit of time, but just basically dropping in your access key and security key will give you visibility to all the available buckets. And then what we'll do is we'll pick a particular bucket to use as our target.
Sorry to interrupt you again.
Go ahead.
That screen gives me the willies. Is there any other option besides an access key, like a role?
Yes, I believe there is. Yes.
Okay. Access keys, no good.
Yep.
Yeah. I think we have like access tokens and stuff, I believe.
Okay.
For this demonstration, you're walking us through the user interface.
Yes.
Makes sense. Can this all be done programmatically
yes,
as well?
It can. Yeah, okay. So we have, let me pause this real fast. We have the HSCLI, and then we have the HSTK, which one is a command line utility, then the other one is a toolkit, and it can be a Python toolkit. And then ultimately, if you're really good, we have a REST interface as well.
Okay.
How about a Terraform provider?
Right.
Oh, we have all that. Yeah, so we'll get to cloud in a second.
Okay.
But we support every template imaginable. Okay. So just continuing on here. Oops, I hope I didn't mess anything up here. So that actually concludes our first demo. So what did we do? We assimilated some third-party storage. In this example, just a Linux server. And then we made sure that it's accessible by SMB. And then we set up an S3 bucket that can be an archive and disaster recovery bucket if you wish, but we're also using it as a means to replicate between sites. Okay, so the second demo is we're going to go ahead and deploy in cloud, and then we're going to finish setting up the global file system. We're going to quickly discuss the Hammerspace deployment options. And then we're going to enable and finish the global file system between sites. And then we're going to understand the behavior of a default global file system, where out of the box, it's a pull on demand, but we want to apply objectives to proactively keep files local at each site. Okay, so let's jump into the second demo. All right, so what I'm showing right now is I'm showing AWS, and that is a the CloudFormation tool that's built into Marketplace. So of the major clouds, we support or we have Marketplace listings, and they're generally a BYOL or a metered offering. So you really have your choice of how you want to consume Hammerspace in the cloud. Now, I won't bore you with all the details of the fields that you have to fill out in a CFT, but what I will do is I'll assume that we're familiar with that and cut directly to it running. So here we are right now. This is a deployment running in AWS. It just stood up. All I'm doing is taking the IP address of the Anvil server, throwing it into a browser, and logging onto the system. See, we have the same dashboard. You can see that the site's slightly different right here. So you can see the location is now in San Francisco Bay Area, while the other one was in Ohio, for example. So shows you it's a different cluster. And then all we're going to do at this point is we're just going to go configure that bucket. And it's the same bucket that we had configured in the on-premise cluster. So you're accessing the same bucket. This is what facilitates our global file system between the two sites. It does take a little bit of time. Does anybody have any questions while we're...
I just have a pretty basic, just a fundamental question. I suppose the UI is pretty nice, of course. I suppose you have at least one API to drive this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Necessary.
Yeah. This is all API driven.
So
we have
right-click inspect. I'll just see the API calls, or do you have a spec that can be downloaded? And
yeah, we have a spec. We actually have a HSTK API toolkit that can be downloaded. Then, of course, we have the HSCLI, which is scriptable command line language too.
Oh, now we're getting to the whole agents using CLIs or MCP servers debate. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. There will be some announcements in the next week about that very topic.
Another question, Shala here. You mentioned earlier, what we were looking at was, I believe, maybe 14,000 files. So I was just kind of curious, what about if it's like a really large data set? Like, what's that timeline look like?
Well, it's a formula, and it really is based on the amount of resources that are in the Anvil. The Anvil that we use in this demonstration is an Amazon EC2 instance that I'm running in the lab. I think it's an M2 2XL large, right? So it's not a representation of what a production environment would be.
Yeah.
Now, our professional services team, when you're looking at what we call a t-shirt size large Anvil server, we understand what that ingestion cadence will be, or have a good understanding of that is. And it's more like a million files per hour or something like that, whatever that is, because that's a production environment. So it's going to be far different than what I'm showing you in this demonstration.
Okay, and then what about, does the system like perform a full file system crawl, or can you ingest metadata, lazily as files are accessed?
It does it. Well, it's really interesting. That's a great point that you brought that up. I didn't really go into the details of it, but if you can imagine a file system with 1 billion files in it, right? And it's a live file system. As you're scanning it, you have users accessing it. We have enough intelligence within our product that says, okay, we're going to go spawn a thread, and we're going to go hit an area and assimilate in real time a section of the file system that the scanner hasn't scanned through yet. So you can go to a very specific subdirectory within your file system, and it will scan on demand and assimilate that and bring it in because a user is requesting access to that specific section within a file system. So we'll scan the directory, parent, child, and subdirectory on down, or we can do it on demand.
Okay. Yeah, I just thinking in my head because I deal a lot with data migration.
Sure.
So our goalpost is forever moving as you're trying to get them migrated. So
yes. Yeah, and again, a lot of people find the intrinsic benefit of Hammerspace is just for storage migrations, right? It's an added benefit. That's something they get for free, is this ability to make this seamless.
Nice.
Okay. Oh, so let you guys know what's going on here. So we created the bucket at the remote site, and now I'm going to go log into my original on-premise cluster. It is the owner of the collections share, and I'm going to give the remote site permissions to participate in the global file system. So that's what I'm doing real fast. Log back into the on-premise cluster. I'm going to go to the collections share. I'm going to go in the edit tab, and now this time I'm going to the file systems tab, and I'm adding a participant. Now let me pause this real fast and tell you what's happening in the background. When we share a bucket as a replication target, there's a reservations file that gets created. And inside that reservations file, any participating site will add its login credentials. It will add the name of the cluster and the IP address for it to connect to. So when you have another cluster connecting, it's going to have a list of all the participants already pre-populated. So all you have to do is select it because it's all in that file itself. It's an encrypted file, but imagine having up to 16 sites participating at the same share at the same time. You want to have that list pre-populated for you. That's exactly what we're showing right now in the GUI. So typing in the username and password of the remote cluster, testing the connection, then adding it to the global file system. So now the collections share is a global resource between sites. It's that simple. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go back to the Anvil in the cloud, and we're going to go look at the collections share, and we can actually see all the files available at the remote site. Just like that, they're all available. So now you can actually see them. You can see all the metadata associated with it.
Quick, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Question. It may be a silly question, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Sure.
I love doing. It would be kind of cool, possibly, for the audience to clarify. We keep hearing the term Anvil, like maybe.
Oh, okay. So I do apologize. So Anvil is our metadata server. And then what we have is a DSX server, a data services node. And at a real high level, the Anvil server is just there to collect and maintain the metadata about the server. And then what it does is it administers NFS 4.2. The DSX servers has several roles and functionalities. One of the roles that it has, it's a protocol portal. And that's why I mentioned earlier, any file protocol other than NFS 4.2, it serves on the DSX. It also is the data mover. So when you set an objective to move data, it is the engine that physically moves the data from one storage platform to another behind the scenes and makes it all seamless. It also, another role that it has, is responsible for moving files to object storage. We call that the cloud mover. Okay. Its job is to take files, chunk it, encrypt it, move it up to an object storage, and then on the other side, bring it back down, unencrypt it, and then we typically will apply encryption, compression on it. So it's also decompressing the file and making it available on the DSX as well. So those are the major roles of a DSX. The Anvil server is really all about metadata and NFS 4.2. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so just to kind of catch yourselves back up to speed here, I'm really running out of time. I'm going to try to connect to SMB in a remote site. Oops, sorry. And just got to map to it. It's really important that we have Active Directory integration on both sites right now, so they understand the SIDs and the layouts between sites. They're all sharing a common domain called cms.dom. If you didn't, you would instantly get permissions issues, right? So we're going to log in real fast. We're going to verify that it's working. And quickly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause this again and talk about why it's taking a while to load this file. Because all we did between the two sites right now is we just replicated the metadata, right? So what this file is actually doing right now is it's going across all the way to the assimilated storage. It's grabbing that file, it's moving it across the DSX, out to a bucket, back to a DSX, back to the SMB share. And it's doing this on demand because we've set no policy on how to cache the data and where to cache the data. So yes, it's going to take a while to do because we're going across the wire each time to pull this file. Now, what we do behind the scenes is we'll cache this in the RAM on the DSX for 5 minutes. If the file is touched or not modified after a 5-minute period, we'll evict that cache and we'll move it back. And then if you touch it again 10 minutes later, you got to go through the whole process again. But we do have this concept called ejectas, what we'll talk about later on, that removes that need to have the wait for the file to be pulled across each time. Alrighty. So there's the file. And I believe that pretty much concludes the second demonstration. Okay, so I'm going to pause real fast, and I'm going to start the second part of the demonstration now. Hello, everybody. My name is Chad Smith. I'm a cloud CTO at, hey, Chad Smith. I'm a field CTO at Hammerspace, responsible for alliances. It's been a long day already. I previously showed 2 demos of Hammerspace on-prem, assimilating some third-party storage, and then setting up a global file system to transfer files to a second site that lives in the cloud. Now we're going to continue that conversation and add on this new concept we like to talk about, which is called Tier 0. So let me bring it back up here. Make sure I reshare my screen. I don't know what happened. I do apologize. Hopefully I can make this work. All right. All right, and I'll put this in presentation mode. Go jump to this slide. That work? No, it did not work. I apologize, guys. I don't know why this is. Share. All right. Third time's a charm. All right, let me get to the next one here. Okay. So this is where it gets exciting, right? So what I like to describe Tier 0 as local performance with the utility of a file system. So we're going to discuss Tier 0 installation dependencies on GPU nodes, how the NVMEs are mapped to the NFS mounts versus mounted shares on the client. We're going to set up Hammerspace, storage, volumes, and this concept called volume groups, and how high availability zones ensure data protection in this model. We're going to review data placement policies that affect the creation, modification of files when a durability or availability objective is applied. Then finally, we'll discuss place-ons and durability objectives and how behind the scenes NFS 4.2 client-side mirroring works. Okay, so before I jump into the demo, let's talk about what it takes to prepare the Tier 0 nodes, or this would be your AI nodes, your GPU nodes. This would be the use case. There is a little bit of installation that needs to be done on these nodes, but it's not like you're a kernel level driver you have to compile for. It is really simple stuff. It can get complicated depending on the environment, because you got NUMA zones and you got all kinds of complexities on larger environments. But in this demo, we're gonna keep it really simple. And really, when I mean simple, it's simple. Basically, you're creating a directory, which is gonna be a mount point. You're gonna drop an NVMe in it, and then you're gonna mount that NVMe to a share. And then you're going to then map your Tier 0 client to that mount that we had created earlier called collections on the Hammerspace system. So what does that look like? We're going to tie each NVMe to a mount, and then we're going to tie it all together by mounting my client to the Hammerspace. And a little switcher, and then I also want to discuss too this notion of availability zones. So by definition, an availability zone is a fault domain. And what we consider a fault domain in this use case is the instance itself and its underlying storage associated with it. And what we do is when we write out files using our client-side mirroring, which is a synchronous write across multiple zones, we want to ensure that we're not writing two mirrored copies to the same node. By dictating what an AZ is, our product ensures that it's not being written to the same node twice, right? Defeats the purpose of client-side mirroring if you're writing to the same drives on the same nodes, right? So that's what an AZ avoids. And of course, to make this all work, it's a place-on. It's another objective that I'll get into a little bit, and we're going to assign it to the collections share. It'll be much clearer in a second, trust me. All right, so another demo here. Just like before, when we assimilated that third-party storage, we basically walked through the same process. We're going to take a storage system, and this time the storage system is an individual GPU node. And then what we're going to do is we're going to assimilate it with NFS other again, and we're just going to type in its IP address. Same step as the previous one. We have lots of scripts that can automate this. Imagine having 100 GPU nodes. You don't want to do this individually, so we have ways of streamlining this process. But we just discovered 2 volumes on the system, and what we're going to do is we're going to append the name with the availability zone that I mentioned earlier. Right? By just appending AZ1 to it, we're telling Hammerspace that this is an availability zone, and these 2 volumes are in that availability zone. I'm just changing the notification thresholds about the usable space and capacity. You really don't have to worry about that too much with Tier 0. And then I'm just going to skip the performance test for part of this demonstration. I know, we're not going to get to it. So I just repeated the process for all 5 nodes. And then you can see that all 10 volumes are available as well. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a volume group. And this volume group is going to be all AZs. And a simple description. Not so simple, actually. Let me fast forward this thing a little bit here. All right, so I finished that. I created the volume group. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to associate all volumes I've created with this volume group. What we are doing is we're creating a distribution map to map all the available volumes to this group. And then all we do to make this thing work is just assign this newly created volume group to the share itself. So I go into the objectives. I'm going to add an objective. We're going to use one called a place on. And I'm going to place on this AZ and apply. And then what's going to happen is you're going to see a flurry of activity. Because what we're doing right now is we're moving all the data that was sitting on that assimilated storage all the way across to all of these tier 0 nodes now. So yes, go ahead.
Are you moving or copying or freezing and moving or?
We are copying the data over, but the concept of Hammerspace, we don't ever like to use the word copies because from a physical standpoint, it's a copy, but from a metadata standpoint, it's a single instance of it. We call that instantiation.
Okay.
So it ever only is a single metadata copy, but it can physically live at multiple spots.
Okay, thank you.
So yes, we are copying the data over.